Hi, welcome to a news episode of Sports Talk Central. I'm your host, Adeep Mahmood, with my normal co-host, Hunter. And today we're going to be talking about the MLB starters, all-star starters being announced, previewing the rest of the roster being revealed today at about 5:30. Then talking some Orioles and Nationals. Orioles are on a bit of a hot streak right now. The Nationals just called up one of the best top prospects in baseball. And then we're going to finish up with some drama with the U.S. men's soccer coach. So the MLB All-Stars, basically the starters came out, and while I bring up the list of starters, who do you think, like obviously none of the guys from the Nationals made it, but who do you think is going to be the best odds for the Nationals?
From the Nats, man, it's really interesting. I mean, like you could honestly make an argument for Kyle Finnegan, I think, with how good he's been throughout this season. I mean,
your thoughts? We'll go ahead and go over starters.
yeah, I mean, Finnegan as the closer, he's going to get a lot of interest at the trade deadline. I mean, obviously, just because I think he's going to be one of the top closers available, but not sure the Nats will deal him just because I think they're in more win now mode for next season. CJ Abrams, obviously, I mean, that's honestly no question there with how great he's been throughout the season. I think if James Wood came up a bit earlier, he would have been in consideration. We'll get to him in a little bit, but those are just the two that I feel like are have been mostly jumping out at me. If I had if I had a dark horse, someone like Mackenzie Gore, he's been great. But also Jake Irvin, he's been one of the most underrated pitchers, I think, in the National League this year. Do I think he should start for the All-Star game? No, people, I'm not that insane, but he's lowered his ERA below 3 for this year, and he's been awesome for the Nats throughout this season.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think Finnegan makes sense. Finnegan for the Nationals, because for starters, for like pitchers, it's typically starters or closers. That's typically how the managers will do it. One of the starters, I mean, the Nationals quietly actually have one of the better rotations in the game. Like Mitchell Parker, I think he's a year away from being in consideration, but I could see Mackenzie Gore. I could see CJ Abrams. Finnegan makes perfect sense. I don't think Hunter Harvey will do it. I think he's just it was an eighth inning arm, but I think you're probably looking at one of the pitchers. I think CJ Abrams and one of the pitchers, one maybe two, but you're not really getting much after that. We'll with the Orioles. This is where we're going to talk the starters, but so MLB All-Star, the starters were announced. So in the American League, as you can see, starting is Rutschman, Adley Rutschman is catching, Vlad Jr., Altuve, Jose Ramirez, Gunnar Henderson, Aaron Judge, Juan Soto, Stephen Kwan, Yordan Alvarez. I mean, Stephen Kwan is a pleasant surprise. He's not, again, Guardians aren't exactly a popular team. The few things that I take away from this is Orioles and Yankees are definitely well represented. Even like what's not shown here is in the final vote, Ryan Mountcastle finished second. Like he was the runner-up in voting. Jordan Westberg was the runner-up for in third base, and Santander was a runner-up. Was like in fifth place for outfielders. So the Orioles could have had more guys, and who knows? Like Yordan Alvarez unfortunately got hit in the knee yesterday. So if he goes out, maybe you see O'Hearn start, which, by the way, would be a great story because Ryan O'Hearn, 5 years as a nobody with the Royals, comes to the Orioles, traded for cash considerations, was DFA'd by them, and 2 years later is potentially one step away from starting as an All-Star. That's just a great, incredible story. Like, and by the way, his numbers are solid. Like he hits the ball hard. His strikeout rate he struck out less. He's walked more. So that's kind of where they are. But when you see this list, like what are your thoughts when you see this starting?
No, I'm same as you. I mean, like the Orioles and the Yankees, I know people will probably get mad that they have a lot of players on there, but they've been two of the best teams in baseball all year, and they have all-stars all over their lineup. So why would they not be well represented at this All-Star game? I love that Jose Ramirez continues to be there. Indeed, I think when you look at players overall in baseball, I think Jose Ramirez might be one of the most underappreciated players in the game. He doesn't
Yeah.
get talked about enough, and he continues to just be like, ho hum, I'm going to go out there and have a great season. You're seeing that with the Guardians this year again. He is awesome. I'm not surprised that Altuve is there. I know the Astros haven't been that good this year, though they have woken up a little bit over the last few weeks, but we all know how good Altuve is as a fielder and a hitter. He's going to make, I feel like, most All-Star games overall. Vlad Guerrero Jr., also no surprise for me. I know the Blue Jays also aren't that good this year, but when I look up and down their lineup, I think he's their best player. But those are just overall my main thoughts. Again, Orioles and Yankees, you expect them to have a lot of players there just because they've been all great this past season. But I love that Jose Ramirez continues to be awesome year after year.
Yeah, and then if you look at the National League, William Contreras from the Brewers, Bryce Harper, Ketel Marte. I feel like the American League has more star power than the National League. I think quietly, National League that's a pretty good lineup. I mean, if you were to go on paper, the American League is definitely better, but who knows with the National League? Obviously, Ohtani's the biggest star power out there. But when you see the National League, what are your thoughts on the National League lineup?
Yeah, I definitely think the AL has, I would say, more star power compared to the NL. I think, Harper being there, he's had another great year. He's in consideration for NL MVP. Same with Trey Turner. The Phillies have just been great overall. And it's no surprise to me that the Phillies have 3 players right there on your screen. They've been great all season. I think, in my opinion, they're their favorites to come out of the National League, even ahead of the Dodgers. They're going to be really tough to beat once October comes around. Ohtani, he's always going to be there, even though he's, his elbow, obviously he's not pitching right now. He's always going to be in there just because of how great of a hitter he is overall. But Philly's well represented. But still, when I look at this league compared to the AL, it's not as, there's not as much star power. There's still a good amount, but it's not as much. I also think the AL, looking at this, is a bit more deeper compared to the NL, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, and I think that's part of it there. Obviously, the other festivities are the home run derby. As of now, we know Gunnar Henderson and we know Alec Boehm. Aaron Judge is not doing it. I don't think Ohtani is doing it. And so it's going to be interesting to see who else does it. Look, if Santander gets into the All-Star game, I'm sure they're going to ask him if he wants to do it, which would be really cool. Like I don't think it's rare that we see, like, if Santander does it, and you get an Anthony Santander and a Gunnar Henderson home run derby final, that would be a lot of fun. I don't know, like I don't think we've ever seen 2 teammates, like current teammates, do the home run derby. But that's the thing on the home run derby. But in terms
I was just going to add, as for who starts in these games for the All-Star game, just to put a bow on this, I think Paul Skeens should start in the National League, man. I know he didn't start the season with the Pirates, but he continues to get better and better and better with every single start. If I am running the NL, I am starting Paul Skeens in the All-Star game. AL, I know this will make you happy. I think Corbin Burns should start for the AL, but NL might be a hot take to some. Paul Skeens is my starter.
Yeah, no, and I think Paul Skeens has a good chance. I mean, Corbin Burns, I will say this with Corbin Burns. The big thing is he is not starting the first game. The first game against the Cubs this week, he's not. It's going to be Dean Kramer. That means he's not in line to start the last game before the All-Star break. So there's a possibility that if he is, more than likely, if he is selected to the All-Star game, he could start. Now, as for the reserves, now let me just get back. I do agree, National League. Paul Skeens could start. You could also see Ronaldo Lopez. You could see him starting. Ranger Suarez, I know he's been really good for the first majority of this first half. Last few starts have been struggling a little bit. He's a guy to look out for. I don't think you're going to see Chris Sale or Tyler Glasnow get the start. But those are just a few names out there. Max Fried's an interesting guy. It's going to be interesting what they do there. But going off of reserves, I mean, look, you saw 2 Orioles starting for the American League. They're not going to be. We already kind of hinted at one. I think we all expect Corbin Burns. He's going to be an All-Star. I'll say this, but I think Jordan Westberg, he's good. I think because every team needs a representative, I don't think he's going to be an all-star. I'll be pleasantly surprised. Ryan O'Hearn, I think, makes it in. I think his story, his numbers, the fact that, like, even in that vote, it was 52% Jordan Alvarez, 48% O'Hearn. I think the players are going to respect it. I think O'Hearn gets in. And then I'm going to say this. I know a lot of Orioles fans were upset earlier this year. They didn't like the signing. But guess what? Craig Kimbrell. I think Craig Kimbrell, well, because he's been solid other than a week and a half, he's been good. He's climbing up the saves board. I think he's going to – I don't know if he's going to cross 478, which is, I think, third highest right now. He's fourth highest. He's like he's at like 439 or something. But he's been good this year. And like I said before, Bruce Bochy and the managers typically are going to go with starters and closers. And Bruce Bochy is a veteran manager. So he's probably going to go with someone with more experience. So you could see Emmanuel Clase, Mason Miller, Craig Kimbrell. Like, those are your closers. Now, so I think those are your starters. So to recap, Rutschman, Henderson, Corbin Burns, Ryan O'Hearn. I'm going to say Santander. I'm going to say he does get in because I think his June is really good, but I could be wrong on that one. And then Craig Kimbrell. So I think those are your Orioles representatives. I know that's a lot, but look, the Orioles have one of the better records. These are well-deserving guys, and I've already conceded Westberg's not making it. So yeah, I think that's kind of where we are with the MLB All-Stars. Now let's talk Orioles and Nationals. The Orioles they were on a 4 or 5 game winning streak. Obviously, they had a bad loss yesterday. That stuff happens. Cade Povich, the guy's been solid. It's not he had a bad start. Like, he couldn't get out of the second inning. 8 earned runs, whatever. The young guys, Heston Kjerstad has been hitting really well today. In today's game, he just hit another 3-run home run. By the way, did you see this story on Twitter? There was a fan that a week ago, that I think it was like on last Saturday. So they were playing the Rangers on Fox Sports. It was bases loaded. This guy tweeted, "If Heston Kjerstad hits a grand slam here, I'm going to get it tattooed on my you-know-what." Heston Kjerstad hits a grand slam, and then he replies to his own tweet 13 seconds later and says, "Yeah, it took me about 13 seconds to regret it." Now, he also did say that 2016, if Geno Smith beat the Ravens, and this is when he was with the Jets, I'll have it tattooed on his ass. So he now has made 2 bets on Twitter that if it doesn't happen, if it happened, like a losing bet, and his butt now has to feel the brunt of it. We're not going to show you the picture but just basically you can kind of see what's going on there. But again, just a lesson: don't make bets that you're behind can't catch. But that is, did you see that story?
I actually did not. I'm terminally online very much, but that's one I actually.
It was covered by John Boy. It was even covered by John Boy as well. So that's how big it was. But yeah, no, that's but yeah, it was. That's why the Heston Kjerstad thing reminded me of that. But he apparently did go out and get that tattoo, so he was a man of his word. Other than that, I mean, the pitching's been good. They are going to go after starting pitching in the deadline. They are not going to trade Jackson Holiday. They are not going to trade Sam Basayo. Kobe Mayo is a guy that Mike Elias has said they're trying to find a spot for him, which basically says they're not moving him. It's just a matter of where he's going to play. So they're not trading Kobe Mayo. I think Kjerstad is going to be your Santander replacement next year. They're not going to trade him. And I know Orioles fans are saying, can't keep all these guys. Those 4 are the ones I think are untouchable. Once you get to like a Dylan Beavers, who, by the way, is a number 6 prospect, or Connor Norby, those are attainable. Those are guys that are going to try to move. And just because they're not a top prospect with the Orioles, they might be top prospects on other teams. So when you do see these deals, I feel like a lot of fans are kind of looking at it as, oh, we want a second-tier guy. Like, this guy is a second prospect in a deal with the Orioles, but they would have been a top prospect on other teams. So it's like I do think that we do have to be understanding of where these prospects are in a general sense. But Tariq Skubal not going to the Orioles. It is interesting. Bob Nightingale did say that rival executives feel that the Rangers are going to shop. If it doesn't go, there's no extreme course correction, that they're going to shop Scherzer, Lorenzen, I think Scherzer, Lorenzen, David Robertson, Kirby Yates, or someone else, Andrew Heaney. So basically, the rental pieces they have, Max Scherzer fits the Orioles perfectly.
They wouldn't shot DeGrom, would they?
No. I don't think teams. I think teams need to see how healthy he is before.
Uh-huh.
But Max Scherzer fits the Orioles. They could use a veteran arm that is a bold, like, even if Max Scherzer's not an ace, he has an ace-like mentality. That could be really useful to this team. I don't think we're going to see the Orioles make a move until later on because of teams like the Rangers, because they have guys that the Orioles could value. So it is going to be interesting what they do there. But the Nationals, obviously, they called up James Wood. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, he's been great. I mean, he's been really battling in all of his at-bats. He had his first home run recently. Beautiful moonshot, by the way. But, so far he's batting .304, 23 plate appearances, played in 6 games, 7 hits, 6 RBIs, drawn 4 walks. Yeah, he struck out 6 times, but I will take a .304 batting average every single time in, a 6-game sample. It's 7 now if you include today's game. But even today, 1 hit. I know he had a strikeout, but drew 2 walks. He has been awesome since coming up from AAA, and he's here to stay. It's really nice seeing the future really finally be here for this team. And Dylan Cruz, he's not too far down the line, I don't think. I think you'll see him probably in September. If you had to ask me, I don't think they're really going to rush him too much, just because this team is really not going to make the playoffs this year. But as for the team overall right now, they're 42-47. They did just drop this series to the Cardinals. Honestly, they probably should have won this series. They blew Friday night's game. They had a 5-0 lead. They have a 5-4 lead going into the bottom of the 9th. Kyle Finnegan blows only his 4th save of the year. He's been really good, but of course, Wilson Contreras wants to hit a game-tying home run and then extra innings. I don't know if I'm the only one that feels this way, but man, they are wild now. It really is just, with the new rules, it is nuts seeing that in action with just a runner on second base. It is a miracle if the pitcher does not allow a run in the top half. And it's definitely exciting, but
that's the reason why they implemented it. You don't want the 18-inning games anymore.
Yeah, no, I understand that just because of the game times, but I feel like also, like, just the more I watch it, maybe this is a hot take to some people, I feel like it's just more and more unfair to pitchers overall, just because they're inheriting a situation where there's a runner on second with no out. So a player just basically hit a double to start the inning, and now you have to work out of that jam, and that just results in, usually a run being scored every top half of the inning, at least for the visiting team. That's what I've noticed overall. The Nats should have won that game. They did win the Saturday game. Mackenzie Gore had a couple of strong innings, but really kind of deteriorated towards the end. He's got to be a little bit better. Today, DJ Hurst pitched, and he's been mostly pretty good, but today, not his finest start. He gave up a few too many runs early in the game, had to get pulled. The Nats bullpen has been really gassed, I think, as of late. Finnegan's been used a lot. Hunter Harvey's been used a lot. It's a bullpen that's kind of running on fumes a little bit right now. So that's been a big problem, just because the starters, I feel like this rotation has been very underrated throughout the year. Irvin's been great. Parker's been really solid. Hers, I think there's something to maybe work with there. Gore, for the most part, has been good, but I feel like they still got to give them a little more at times, just because this past week, I feel like the bullpen was being used a little too much. Abrams, he's still doing his thing. Obviously nice seeing James Wood, but it's just nice seeing the foundational pieces there deep, and you can see them building towards next year, because I think next year is when they're going to spend money and try to get back to the playoffs. I know I was kind of drinking the Kool-Aid. I had some copium going when this team was around the 500 and in a playoff spot, but they're 42-47. They've lost 6 of the last 10, or 7 of the 6 of the last 10, excuse me. That's what it is right now. But I know that they're not going to make the playoffs this year, even though the NL is not that good. They'll probably sell off some of their pending free agents at the deadline. Finnegan, we're going to have to see what they do, but I expect someone like maybe Jesse Winker to go, maybe Williams if he can get back. But the pitching is still, it's been mostly good outside the last week or two without the services of someone like Josiah Gray, who's been banged up for most of the season. Once he comes back, that's going to be really interesting to see as well. But, the building blocks are there, still some weaknesses, but I'm still mostly overall happy with where they are at this point of the rebuild, because I think next year you're going to see them take a much bigger step and hopefully get back to the playoffs if they spend some more money.
Yeah, I think that's I think they're definitely a lot closer. We'll see what they do there. All right, so let's move on to a different sport, men's soccer. Obviously in Copa America they lost and there's a lot of drama on Greg Berhalter and his future. For those who didn't know, that I think it was like a year or two ago that there was a search done to see who the next coach would be, and it was they still kept him. Obviously, you're on Twitter. Like, I've seen you on Twitter. You've been kind of upset that they've kept him. Like, let's explain why.
He's just not qualified, I think, and the team has just kind of regressed over these last couple of years. Yeah, it was nice that they got to the round of 16 at the World Cup. You get out of that group, great. But, you got exposed by the Netherlands. That's a very veteran group. They have a better coach. They exposed Berhalter tactics. Okay, but you still lose in round of 16. There's much to build for. Okay, you then get the Nations League stuff. Okay, you win another nation. They've won the first three Nations Leagues, the Nations League titles, under Berhalter. But, Adi, the thing is, oh, wow, you're beating Mexico, this is the worst Mexican team I think I've seen in my lifetime. They're terrible. You've beaten Canada, who is a little bit better. I still don't think they're that good. You've beaten a team like Panama through there as well. Beating CONCACAF teams is not really that impressive. A lot of these CONCACAF teams are really not that good. You saw how Panama got destroyed by Colombia in the quarterfinals. And I'm not here to say that the U.S. would have done better. The U.S. lost 5-1 to Colombia in a friendly, but still, like, you're letting a team like Panama get through, which really doesn't even have that much top tier talent, and you're just watching them get obliterated by Colombia. Like, it's just, there were no excuses to not get out of that group. You started out strong by beating Bolivia. You probably should have beaten them by more than 2 goals. You then have Panama, and you can't have that red card. Like, that's just a lack of discipline. It shows how Greg Berhalter just doesn't, I don't think he's the right voice for this team, considering this isn't the first time something like this has happened. Last year, when they played Trinidad and Tobago, Sergino Dest got ejected for a red card. He punted the ball out of the stadium because he was so pissed about a call. You can be mad about a call, but you can't do stuff like that. But that's now 2 red cards in the span of basically a year, where 2 of your best players are getting sent out of games and then being suspended for games in the future. Where is the discipline? Where is the accountability of this head coach? I don't care how young these kids are. You need to coach them up a little bit to make sure that they don't do any of this stuff. His tactics are so vanilla. It relies on so many crosses being spammed. It doesn't work. When a better coach goes up against him, that coach is able to expose his system so easily. And I'm sorry, the World Cup is coming up in less than 2 years. There is no excuse to not get out of the knockout group here when 2 of the teams in there were Bolivia and Panama. The U.S. is better than both of those teams. Uruguay, they're great. They just beat Brazil. The U.S. is not better than that country. But I'm sorry, even with 10 men for a lot of that match, there's no reason for the U.S. to have lost that match. They should have at least gotten a draw out of it. That would have been in a much better situation heading into that last game against Uruguay. But they weren't able to do it, and that's on them at the end of the day. So, I know it's taking a while for them to cut bait with Berhalter. I think with all the noise you're seeing right now on social media, the entire country, just with the fans, they're just over.
They turned out comments on the Twitter account, like on that one post. I mean, that should tell you how
you cannot bring him back if you are serious about the World Cup here in 2026. You know it. The World Cup is coming here in less than 2 years. This is the biggest soccer tournament for this country, for the men specifically, in a very long time. You have to go full steam ahead with the right coach in place. It's not Greg Berhalter. And if you do fire him, I don't want an MLS guy in charge. I want you to go out into Europe and hire an experienced European head coach that can get the most out of this group. Someone in the MLS, I mean, that's just really the old boys club. But that would also show how corrupt the U.S. Soccer Federation is. They're not doing a good enough job. The upper people that run it have done really poorly over the last year. I mean, heck, indeed, his contract was up, Berhalter's, last year. They interviewed numerous people, including Jesse Marsh, who's coaching the Canadian team right now. They're in the semifinals. Great job by Canada, by the way. I don't even think Canada's that good, but great job, Jesse Marsh. They passed over him to bring back Greg Berhalter. Just makes no sense. It really makes no sense. So if you cut bait here, you need to go after a coach that is experienced in coaching in Europe and that is someone who you can pay a little bit. They have the money to pay a top coach. It's all about them thinking about how serious they are about this team over the next 2 years. You wasted this opportunity at Copa America. You didn't get to go up against some of the top teams. Now for the next couple of years, you're going to be playing some bad friendlies against teams like New Zealand. There's one against Canada. I mean, that should be at least a little interesting, but I think the U.S. overall talent-wise, I think the U.S. is better. And then you have Nations League, Gold Cup, whatever. But those cups aren't even that fun just because you're going up against CONCACAF teams. So there's just really no full big friendly, I feel like at least right now, that they can really go up against and just test their mettle. They did it against Brazil. That was nice. They did it against Colombia. They got blown out. But it's just going to be a lot of cupcake games over these next 2 years before the World Cup. And that brings me to my last point. Go after Jurgen Klopp. I know he left Liverpool, but you're not going to have to pay him 18, 19 million a year. Maybe it's something like 11 to 12 million a year. They have the money to do it. Go out and at least ask it. If you're not at least asking him if he's interested in this job, you should not be running the U.S. Soccer Federation. So everyone's fed up, including me. Obviously, I've been very upset throughout this, but they got to get this right, or 2026 could go just like how this Copa America did here.
Yeah, I think you said Jesse Marsh was the guy that they could have hired, and then it's just now. I mean, granted, he let Jurgen Klopp left Liverpool. I mean, but yeah. I was watching a video on this to prepare for this topic, and then I was listening to how, for a while, there's a lot of people from Europe, like Messi, Gareth Bale. They were taking pay cuts to come to the United States. But again, these are players. This is just playing in the MLS, trying to convince a coach who's accomplished in Europe. And I think I agree with you. An MLS coach, to me, like if the guy they need to bring in someone with connections to Europe, because the talent pool in the United States is migrating to Europe for a reason. And the problem at the end of the day, you want to have those connections. You want to have someone that knows that can manage it. And at the end of the day, and yeah, there is Jurgen Klopp is the guy that is going to be desirable. But I think that there's going to be a pay cut. I think that he's got to take a pay cut. But also, I think I'm not going to go too much into it, but then they also made the big deal about how Berhalter is getting paid the same amount as the women's coach. And if they have to pay Jurgen Klopp way more, then the PR is like, at this point.
Doug McIntyre debunked that. He reported that the men's coach and the women's coach don't have to make the same salary. He said that. He said the men's coach can be paid more. I know there's been a lot of discourse about that, but at least that's what Doug McIntyre was reporting.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. Like that's what some people might say. Like in terms of if you have to put in all the money. You were talking about MLS experience. The next guy is Steve Cherundolo.
Doug discussed him in his video with Fox Sports last night. I think he will be ready at some point. I wouldn't do it for 2026. I don't think he's ready for that.
But yeah, I think that's the local guy that if they were. But so I think that he wouldn't be the good old boys, bring in someone else. But he's someone that right now this is a urgent situation, and that you need someone with more experience. Fox Sports has the likelihood at 8, but that might just be whatever. Gareth Southgate, Jim Curtin.
But again, I don't want MLS coaches. I really, if someone like, it's just like, I don't want an MLS coach, man.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think that at this point in time, go with someone with more experience. And then if that guy doesn't work out, maybe groom someone from the MLS ranks to work with your someone like a Jurgen Klopp type guy, and then that guy can take over. But yeah, I think that's they gotta get rid of. They got to get rid of Greg Berhalter, and especially, and the other thing you didn't mention, he had that. There was that drama with that player. I can't remember the player's name.
It was Gio Reyna.
Yeah, Reyna. Yeah, Gio Reyna. And it was like the thing was the dad and everything else. So he's been at odds with the players for a while now. And this is how bad it is.
Time he was, but then they backed him after he got rehired. But at this point, you have no choice. This failure is unacceptable. You cannot, in good conscience, bring him back with less than 2 years before the World Cup. You have to nail this next hire if you fire him. Again, there should be no choice here. We'll have to see what the U.S. Soccer Federation does, but the fan base is really upset. You are seeing tweets on social media every day with fire Berhalter or Berhalter out. Heck, I've been seeing top YouTube accounts with followers for the team that do reactions. They're emailing the U.S. Soccer Federation. I've seen the emails that they posted of screenshots wise on Twitter. Everyone is not happy. You cannot, in good conscience, bring him back at all. There's just no reason for it.
Yeah, and I think we're going to end the show on that note. Next week we are going to be talking a little bit about the MLB draft. Will be up next week. It's just there's just not a lot. There's just not the Paul Skeens type prospect that's going to be available. I mean, Charlie Condon, the first baseman out of Georgia, has ridiculous power. Jack Caglione out of Florida, a switch left-handed power, switch hitter type. He's kind of like a Shohei Ohtani type. So those are kind of the big names out there. So it's going to be interesting. I mean, so we're going to talk about that. We're going to also talk about the All-Star game. The rosters will be fully announced. So we'll be back next week with probably more in baseball.
Yep. See you guys next week.